Have you ever stopped to wonder what single hidden technology quietly saved literally 25% of the world's electricity? Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the absolutely incredible, century-long science behind the screens, the streetlights, and all those devices we interact with every single day. We are demystifying the light-emitting diode, the hidden hero of illumination. To really set up the stakes for what we're talking about today, we got to ask ourselves that massive question again. What tiny technology quietly saved 25% of the world's electricity? I mean, just think about the sheer staggering scale of global energy consumption for a second. What single innovation could possibly have that kind of monumental impact? Well, the answer is the LED. And this number right here brilliantly illustrates exactly why it's so revolutionary. 5. An LED consumes just 5% of the power of an old incandescent bulb to give you the exact same amount of light. So when you consider that electric lights have historically been responsible for around a quarter of all global electricity usage, transitioning to a technology that just sips a mere fraction of that power, it's an absolute environmental and economic triumph, a total game changer. Section 1, the century-long quest. Okay, so how did we actually get here? We're going to rewind over 100 years to track what is basically the ultimate underdog story of this tech, because, spoiler alert, this didn't happen overnight. The whole journey started way back in 1907. A British engineer named H.J. Round was tinkering with radio detectors, and he just observed this mysterious glow coming from a crystal of silicon carbide. It was just a brief flash, but it proved electroluminescence was actually possible. Fast forward 20 years to 1927, and a brilliantly self-educated Russian scientist named Oleg Losev created the very first LED, actually publishing papers on the physics of it. But, it wasn't until 1962 that Nick Holonyak Jr., an American scientist over at General Electric, developed the first practical visible LED. It's crazy to think about how these early scientists' stubborn perseverance transformed a curious accidental spark into a totally functional device. And what's truly fascinating is how the industry reacted to Holonyak's breakthrough. He used a specialized semiconductor alloy, gallium arsenide phosphide, to create this really distinct red light. Over at GE, they literally called it the magic wand. And Holonyak totally hit the nail on the head when he accurately predicted that this exact type of semiconductor lighting would eventually replace conventional incandescent and fluorescent lamps. This right here was the birth of the modern LED. Section 2. Unlocking the spectrum. But here's the thing. A single red indicator light isn't going to light up your living room or build a television screen, right? I kind of like to think of this era as a scientific video game, where humanity had to figure out how to beat different levels just to unlock the full spectrum of visible colors. And for a while, scientists were knocking those colors out one by one. In 1972, George Crawford, who was actually a former graduate student of Holonyak, invented the yellow LED. And throughout the 70s and 80s, these brilliant minds developed new materials that gave us bright orange and green. But then they hit a massive wall. The missing link was high brightness blue light. Without a bright blue, it's physically impossible to mix colors together to create white light. It was literally the ultimate holy grail of lighting. For decades, researchers struggled. Without blue, LEDs were basically stuck just being digital clock displays and traffic signals. Section 3, the blue LED breakthrough. So this brings us into the early 1990s, and I absolutely love this quote. At the time, Shuji Nakamura was working for a relatively small chemical company in Japan. Thousands of researchers globally were aggressively trying to create blue LEDs using a material called zinc selenide, because, well, conventional wisdom said it was the absolute best path forward. But Nakamura, he took a brilliantly unorthodox approach. He said, if there's a lot of competition, I cannot win. Only a small number of people were working with gallium nitride, so I figured I'd better work with that. Talk about the ultimate underdog strategy. Gallium nitride was notoriously difficult to work with, but Nakamura was completely undeterred. And wow, did his stubborn strategy pay off. It changed the world. By 1993, Nakamura, alongside researchers Isamu Akasaki and Hiroshi Amano, successfully developed a high-brightness blue LED using that notoriously stubborn gallium nitride. This invention was nearly 100 times brighter than any previous blue LED attempt. This was it, the final key. By finally unlocking blue, they unlocked the ability to create white light, a feat so massive it rightfully earned the trio the 2014 Nobel Prize in Physics. Section 4, how LEDs actually work. Now, before we get into how that white light rapidly transformed our global infrastructure,
let's pause the history for just a sec to do a quick, super accessible breakdown of the physics behind the glow. The crucial point here is the contrast between the old and the new. First, look at the traditional incandescent bulb. It works by forcing an electric current through a delicate wire filament, heating it up until it literally glows white hot. Sure, it produces light, but it wastes a massive amount of energy just generating useless heat. Contrast that with the LED. It uses pure electroluminescence. By passing a current through specially layered semiconductor materials, it directly converts electricity into light particles, photons. Because it doesn't rely on heating a filament, it runs incredibly cool and intensely efficiently.
But wait, how do we actually get the white light we need for our homes? Well, it's a brilliant little trick. Step 1. You take that incredibly bright blue LED that Nakamura invented. Step 2. You apply a special yellow phosphor coating right over the top of it. As the blue light passes through, it excites the phosphor. And step 3, the unabsorbed blue light mixes perfectly with that new yellow light. Because blue and yellow are complementary colors, they combine and totally trick the human eye into seeing pure, brilliant white light. And today, the way we package these tiny marvels has evolved significantly based on what we need them to do. In modern manufacturing, you've got SMD, or surface-mounted device, where individual red, green, and blue chips are grouped into tiny units and soldered right onto a board. It's flexible, it's cost-effective, but compare that to COB, or chip-on-board. Here, the raw LED chips are mounted directly onto the circuit board and then completely sealed inside a protective resin. This gives you vastly superior heat dissipation, incredible durability, and the completely smooth surface, which is exactly why COB is the go-to choice today for high-end, fine-pitch indoor video displays, the kind you'd see in a high-tech control room.
Section 5. The Global Energy Revolution.
So we've got the science, we've got the white light, and we've got the advanced manufacturing. This is where this tiny tech starts completely replacing century-old infrastructure all over the planet. Just consider this single massive number, 100,000. That is the number of hours an LED can last. When you compare that to the pitiful 1,000-hour lifespan of a traditional incandescent bulb, which, by the way, inevitably fails because the intense heat destroys its own filament, the difference is just staggering. So LEDs don't just save massive amounts of electricity, they vastly reduce global materials consumption, because you practically never need to replace them.
And their efficiency, it's constantly skyrocketing. If you track luminous efficacy, which is really just a fancy way of saying how many lumens of light you get per single watt of energy, you see this dramatic shift. Early commercial LEDs produced about 50 lumens per watt. But modern commercial LEDs, they routinely hit 150. And the absolute highest performing LEDs being engineered right now are pushing well past 200 lumens per watt. It is a relentless, continuous climb in brightness and efficiency that is actively driving down the entire world's power grid demands.
Section 6. The future of displays.
But LEDs are doing so much more than just lighting our streets and living rooms. They are the actual visual interfaces of our modern lives. We're now seeing how LEDs are completely ditching old-school backlights to revolutionize the screens right in our pockets. For the longest time, standard displays were LCDs, and those required a big, glowing backlight panel shining through color filters. But then it came OLED, the organic light-emitting diode. These use organic molecules that literally act as their own self-emissive subpixels. Because every single microscopic pixel produces its own light, you can turn them off completely. This entirely eliminates backlight leakage, giving you infinite, absolutely perfect blacks. And since there's no bulky backlight, the screens can be incredibly thin, even flexible enough to fold completely in half.
There's a catch, though. Organic materials can degrade over time, which can lead to burn-in issues. Enter what might be the ultimate solution, micro-LED. This takes us back to incredibly durable inorganic materials, but it shrinks them down to an almost unimaginable scale. We're talking microscopic LED chips smaller than 50 micrometers. That is literally thinner than a human hair. Micro-LED promises those same perfect blacks you get from OLED, but with vastly superior durability, zero burn-in, and absolutely extreme brightness.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. As this technology, which remember was born over a century ago from a mysterious glowing crystal, as it continues to advance and shrink, we have to ask, will the screens of tomorrow eventually become as thin as a single human hair? Could they even become completely invisible when turned off, blending seamlessly into the environment around us? The journey of the LED, from a faint green spark in 1907 to the incredibly vibrant, ultra-efficient displays we rely on today, is nothing short of magical. So the next time you look at your phone screen or flip on a light switch, take a quick moment to appreciate the absolutely relentless science that's lighting your way. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.